Well, it's only up 138% for the year. Let's bring in Wedbush's Dan Ives to break down what to expect. Welcome back.
Yeah, good to be here.
Options are pricing in a bigger move up or down than we normally see. Why do you think that is?
I think it's really about margins. They're going to be able to show that margins are troughing and could start to rebound into later this year. If that happens, combined with what we're seeing on deliveries, especially in China, I think that's the 1-2 punch that ultimately gets us on its path to $1.5 trillion.
Gross margins could be the lowest in perhaps 6 years.
Yep.
What makes you believe that they're troughing at a time where Musk is obviously putting growth over profitability, which he's made it clear himself?
And in our opinion, that was the smart strategic poker move that they needed to ultimately do to go after volumes, cut costs, cut prices. But I think the price cuts, 95% of it, is in the rearview mirror. So I think now you're starting to see ultimately stabilization there. I think battery cost, ultimately, that's coming down. It gives them a tailwind, scale and scope. And ultimately, I think as we go into this year, this is now going to be that trough moment. I think it was a moment of truth. And ultimately, I think he continues to play chess, others checkers.
Why do you think the price cuts are done?
Just from a demand perspective. What we're seeing specifically in China, where there's really been a price war going on, we're now starting to see demand continue to uptick. And I think that's important. This is going to be a record China quarter. That'll be a big focus in the call in terms of how Musk talks about from a demand perspective. And also margins in China are incrementally higher than in the U.S.
You don't think we're going to get a potential price war here in the U.S.? I mean, you look at what Ford did with the F-150 Lightning, you drop it by $10,000. No surprise that they do that after Musk has repeatedly done it. You know, they're coming out, Tesla is, with the Cybertruck. I mean, how do we think about all of that in the context of a potential price war here?
Yeah, I think for Tesla, I mean, they're in a massive position of strength because of those margins that are just so far above the industry.
Sure, well, Musk wants to remain in that position of strength. That's my point.
And to your point, I think Farley and Ford, they heard the footsteps of Musk. They hear the footsteps of Rivian. I do think that was a smart move for them. But ultimately, if you look at Tesla, you know, they really continue to be more and more a position of strength because they could do this. And I don't really see a price war in the U.S. because today, from a demand perspective, we are still in the first inning of this EV green tidal wave playing out.
They already reported, you know, amazing deliveries in the quarter, right? Up 80-something%. We're going to get anything that you're paying attention to, especially closely on the delivery angle today?
Yeah, I think they'll probably tip the hand a little about potentially delivery second half of the year. What I believe is going to be toward that 2 million vehicles overall for the year. Streets call it 1.8 million. That's important because now we start to get over that 2 million mark into next year. With Cybertruck coming in terms of that drum roll, also expect an update for them to reiterate productions on par. Look, I mean, the bears will focus, of course, there'll be certain things to focus on, margins and some others. But I believe if they call it trough, line in the sand, this is a stock that ultimately heads back toward 350.
I mean, you point out the bears are going to point to negatives. I mean, the stock's up a lot. Gross margins are coming in. So why do you necessarily have to be a bear on the stock to point out some of the concerns that exist on those really, I think, key metrics?
Sure.
Why can't you just be a realist on sort of where things are relative to where they were, both in terms of price and in terms of margin?
No, and it's a great point. I think clearly you've seen gross margins come down significantly. I think that was the right move. I think it's really looking forward because I think the major change in the story is that AWS moment in terms of the supercharger, Ford, GM, 313 area code now using Tesla. And I think the next steps, it's battery and the big drum roll. What I view as sort of the Super Bowl for them, it's AI. Because I could argue from an AI perspective, that's not even priced in here, which is why I think they're really, right now, I think ultimately just starting to sort of turn the corner on that strategy.
What about Cybertruck? What are your expectations there?
I think that's, if you look at it coming out of the gate, I think you'll start to see deliveries early next year. There's ultimately 200 to 300K units as it sort of gets to some sort of scale. And then you look what's happened with F-150. I mean, this is something for Tesla that's just going to add to the overall growth as well as what they're going for in the consumer. And it's going to give them more scale in Austin, which ultimately is just going to be a big part of their success, especially on the battery side.